Along I-70 lies a trail of blood left by an unnamed serial killer. The murderous rampage began on April 8, 1992, and within 30 days, 6 bodies were left in its wake. Who was this lone gunman, and what kind of depraved mind could do such a thing? And where is he now? Today we're talking about the I-70 serial killer. Hi guys, welcome to the Chasing Justice podcast. I'm your host, Sonova Cantrell. Who am I? Well, I'm an award-winning crime writer, coach, and victims advocate. And you are listening to the Chasing Justice Revisited podcast. This is a reboot of my former show, Chasing Justice. We will be talking about cold cases in the news, criminal conspiracies, corruption, and the dark psychology of criminal masterminds. I know you're going to enjoy the show, but before you do, please like, subscribe, and share. All of that BS really helps us defeat the algorithm monster. I'll see you on the inside. He was a ghost, unseen, unheard, and perhaps this haunted him. But he was going to be seen, and his gunshot would be heard. It still echoes today in the heart of America. On the warm day in April 1992, a lone gunman walks through the door of the Payless Shoe Source. No one noticed the popping sounds or the man exiting the building a few moments later. 26-year-old Robin Fuldauer lay dead in the back room. 3 days later, the horrid scene would play out again, nearly 700 miles away in Wichita, Kansas. This time, the killer hit a snag. There were actually 2 women in the store, but it didn't matter. Once the killer walked through the door, nothing would stop him. The dinging of the bell hanging over the door signaled the beginning of the end for Patricia Majors and Patricia Smith. But then came another snag. A customer strolled in to the murder scene. He had made arrangements with the women prior to pick up an order 15 minutes after closing time. The killer tried to force the man to the back, but he refused to go. Instead, the man began to negotiate. This was taking too long. Let him go. Let him go. Get out. Get out. The killer had left his first witness behind. 16 days would pass before the killer would strike again. This time, his target was Sylvia's Ceramics in Terre Haute, Indiana. He walked into the store and noticed a petite brunette with a ponytail rearranging the bottom shelf. No snags this time. He shoots the worker in the back of the head and turns to walk out. Snag. This victim doesn't fit his mold. He wanted a small woman with brown hair. This was a man. Panicked and angry, the killer escapes back to I-70 unfulfilled in his murderous desires. 6 days later, he'd strike again in St. Charles, Missouri. This time, there would be no snags. Walk in, pop, walk out, dead woman in the back. 4 days later, in Raytown, Missouri, only 200 miles away, the serial killer got yet another victim. 6 lay dead in 29 days before the killer goes eerily quiet. Today's episode is brought to you by Bones Coffee Company. You can forget about boring coffee when you drink Bones Coffee. Not only do they offer a variety of flavors such as strawberry cheesecake and maple bacon, they are a family-owned company that puts great detail not only in their coffee, but in the artwork that comes on each individual bag. Bones Coffee has a coffee club that will deliver your favorite coffee to your door every month. If that wasn't enough, they also have some amazing swag to offer. Check out Bones Coffee Company today. I'll have my affiliate links in the show notes for you. Hi guys, you're watching another episode of Chasing Justice Revisited. We are revisiting the case of the I-70 serial killer. I've got on the line 2 of my favorite co-hosts. I've got my research assistant, Tammy. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing pretty good. And then I've also got my dear friend and fellow crime writer and victims advocate, Cricket Andrews. How are you, Cricket?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Okay, well, tonight we're going to dive into the case of the I-70 serial killer. And if you hear me scribbling around with papers, it's because this one is so much to get into. I have to have notes. I can't memorize all this. It's crazy how much this man got away with, and we still don't really have any good evidence. So this case started on April 8th, 1992, as far as we know, because there's always a possibility this guy was doing this somewhere else and it's just not linked in. On April 8th, 1992, a 26-year-old brunette woman opened the Payless shoe store in Indianapolis, Indiana. Her name was Robin Fuldauer. Okay, now she was working the Payless shoe store. She was working alone. This is 1992, so this is back before a lot of technology that we have now. There wasn't a lot of surveillance. There wasn't a lot of, there wasn't cell phones, all these kinds of things. So this is back before that. So all of you youngsters who don't know how to relate to life without a cell phone, this was back before then. This was, back dinosaur era. We did survive without those things. But this is the time frame that we're talking about. So this is, just complicates this even worse. A lot of these small strip malls didn't have surveillance cameras. Their biggest security was a bell on the door and then a panic button under the desk. So they didn't have a lot of security measures, and unfortunately, that has just made this case even worse. But on April 8th, 1992, Robin Fuldauer was running the Payless shoe store, and about somewhere between 1:30 and 2 o'clock, a man walks into the store. He coaxes her into the back room somehow. We don't know if he forces her or what he does, but he gets her into the back room. He shoots her in the back of the head. As he walks out, he grabs a little bit of cash out of the drawer, not all of it, just grabs a little bit of cash out of the cash register and simply disappears. Okay, and so we're thinking, how the heck does this happen? Okay, the next happening was on April 11th, 1992. This is only 3 days later. It's 700 miles away. This man strikes again. This time, it's a little bit unusual for him because he came up to this bridal shop just off of I-70. Again, he just seems to drop off of an exit on I-70, look for a little storefront shop where there's a short brunette working, and that's his target. He walks in, shoots, he walks out, and he disappears. Well, this happens again on April 11th, but unfortunately, this is the situation where it gets a little bit uncomfortable for the man. It's not his normal target. He walks in, and these two women, there's actually two women there that fit his descriptions, but there was two instead of one. That complicated the matter enough, but then he didn't realize that the store was actually closed. They were only there because they were waiting on a customer who had called in and asked if they could stay late. He needed a cummerbund. So they were only there and waiting for somebody at the door because of this man's call. So when he comes to the door, they automatically think it's him. They let him in. Okay. So one of the girls they said was working in the front. One of the girls was working in the back. So I'm assuming when he looked through the window, he only saw one. So he thought, okay, this is a good target. Long story short, he gets both women into the back room. He kills them, gunshot to the back of the head. It looks like now in the first recording I did with Hootie, it said, we talked about how it was just one shot to the back of the head. In some of these cases, you'll find the information that's come out. There was actually two shots in some and one in others. So it wasn't necessarily as consistent as Hootie and I thought the first time around when we was going through this. But anyways, he ends up shooting both of these women. And by the time he turns around and starts to get back out of the building, that customer shows up. Now, that customer is a tall, big man who ends up talking his way out of the situation, even though the guy was trying to coax him to the back. Now, the guy gets out, the guy calls the police, but the police don't show up, and it's been over an hour. So by the time the police gets there, one woman's dead, the other one is almost, she would die shortly thereafter. Now, I'm trying to just skip through because there's so many details I'm having to skip over, just trying to get you an outline of this. We will deep dive into these a little bit more. 16 days after that, it's April 27th, 1992. He gets to Terre Haute, Indiana. The killer strikes another small, petite brunette working in a place called Sylvia's Ceramics. This time, it's a little bit odd as well. He wants to go in, it seems like his mindset is he wants to go in and kill a specific type of woman. He wants a short, petite brunette with long hair. Okay, usually in a ponytail or just long brown hair. That's what he wants. That's when he wants to kill. Well, he walks into Sylvia's Ceramics. He sees a petite brunette with a long brown ponytail crouched down, arranging the bottom shelf. He shoots. And then he realizes he hit a man. It was a smaller built man with a long brown ponytail. So this is how fast this guy's working. He's thinking, I just want this type of person. I'm going to kill them. I'm going to walk in. I'm going to walk out. So April 27th, his plan doesn't go quite right either. So skipping on fast, May 3rd, so it's literally a week later, he found his next target. Now, this is in a Western wear store back in St. Charles, Missouri. Okay, so she's working in this Western wear store. And let's see, this says May 3rd, he hits Nancy Kitzmiller. Nancy Kitzmiller is working in a Western wear store, listening, got the country music playing. She's in her boots and her her cowgirl outfit, and she's having a good time, just arranging shelves. He kills her. 4 days later, on May 7th, okay, he shoots Sarah Blessing in Raytown, Missouri. Now, this is another one where things get a little bit wonky in his plan because he actually gets off of I-70. He goes to this little shopping center and he walks up to a place that he thinks is going to be his target. He looks through the glass, but there's a man repairing TVs that looks up at him and they catch each other's gaze for a long moment. And then he walks on to the next place and there he shoots Sarah Blessing. And then he walks out. Now, this witness, this man, not only looked him in the eye for a few seconds, but he also, when he heard the shot, he came running out of his own building and saw the man running around the corner the opposite direction. So he calls the police, and the police try to get there, but it was too late for Sarah Blessing. Okay. 16 months later, we're going to find out that this guy hits again, most likely. But there's a 16-month window. So I'm going through trying to give you this real fast rundown, and I'm not doing a very good job because there's so many details I want to get into, but I'm trying to give you the overview. So you start from April 8th, and then you go literally to May 7th. So you literally have 29 days, and he has killed all of these people. 29 days. So this guy is running fast. He's running hard. He's running this way 700 miles. He'll go the opposite way 600 miles. He's running back and forth on I-70, really like a maniac speed here. And he's hitting people. He's just getting off at seemingly random exits. He finds a storefront building. He finds a shop that is, and this is random days of the week too. So this is like, there was a Wednesday afternoon. I think Nancy Kitzmiller was killed on a Wednesday afternoon at 2:00. So it's random times. It's not a normal, okay, he's off of work, so it's going to be every Friday evening at 7:00. This is random times. So he's obviously traveling great distances in a short period of time. So we're talking 29 days. Okay, then all of a sudden, 16 months, there's nothing. But in that time frame, something drastic happens, okay? 16 months later, we'll talk about what changed this killer's MO. We're going to see what changes in that 16 months. We'll dive into that here in a minute. But I'm just going to keep trying to run them all down here. So 16 months later, on September 25th, 1993, Sarah Blessing's murderer pops up in Texas. Okay, so this killer pops up on again just off of another interstate. I-35 intersects with I-70, and it goes straight down into Texas. So they walk into another storefront building. They find another short, petite little brunette woman killed, gunshot wound to the back of the head in the back of a store, another 22. And this is in Fort Worth, Texas. Okay, so this is September 25th. Then all of a sudden, November 1st, we get another hit. November 1st, Amy Vess is working alone in a dancewear shop, and she is hit again. Just walk in, walk out, hit. Then on January 15th, 1994, Vicky Webb is another complication. Okay. Vicky Webb is working alone in a Houston gift shop, and this man comes in and asks her for something on the shelf behind the register. And so she turns around and she gets shot in the back of the head. Now, the complication comes when she doesn't die. She is paralyzed, but she doesn't die. And so she lays there and pretends to be dead. And if it wasn't for her quick thinking, she would have been dead, because he rummages around in the drawer, and she talks about in some of her testimonies that she could see his feet and she could hear him rummaging around the drawer, and she just focused on being as still as possible. She didn't realize that she had no choice. The only thing she could move was her eyeballs. But she laid there and let him think she was dead. Now, something happened that made him question if she was dead or not. So all of a sudden, without warning, he flips her over real fast and pulls her pants off, thinking that, I guess, if this was, an assault, that if she wasn't dead, she was going to fight him. Well, she didn't. She couldn't. And so he puts the gun between her eyes and he pulls the trigger and it misfires. Okay. He hears something outside, like somebody else is coming nearby or a car pull up. Something scared the guy and he turned around and rushed out. A moment or two later, some customers come in the store. All she can do is kind of mumble and groan and gurgle, and they find her and they call the police, and she's actually alive to this day. So this is a massively quick rundown of something that's very complicated. But we're going to go back and do some deep dives. But the reason why we're talking about this case is it's back in the news. They have a new task force that's gotten together in 2021, trying to do some different DNA evidence, trying to DNA testing, trying to see if they can get some leads. But they have a new task force together trying to finally solve this case after all these years, because most of the original investigators are retired now, but they're still actively chasing this. But it's in the news. Somebody wrote a book, and it was a good excuse to bring it back into the news. And so that's kind of what we're talking about today. Tammy, I'll start with you. This is your first big case that I've given you to research for me. What did you think of this? I mean, I didn't start you out with no light case. I started you one out with multiple homicides, serial killer, still unsolved. What was your first gut instinct on this case?
Well, as I looked into it, to me, he doesn't seem like a very smart person. I mean, he let one guy get away and for a witness. And it's like he tried to make it look like a robbery, but he didn't take all the money. Right. I mean, if you're going to make it look like a robbery, why don't you take all the money? That's not very smart. And the gun that he used was huge, wasn't it? Fairly large gun.
Yep.
That would be hard to conceal. I mean, that didn't make sense.
Right.
So to me, he's not very smart.
No, and it's very frustrating to find someone that doesn't seem to have a real complicated plan, and yet we still don't have an answer. I think that's frustrating, because you're thinking, you've always hear these people getting away with it for 30 years because they had this complicated plan and they had this backup and this cover story and this, and they got rid of the evidence here and none of that's in this case. And yet it is so, you think about it though, what kind of touch DNA would there be? What kind of evidence is there? If there's no cameras, he hits at random odd points in the day when the traffic's low, and then he doesn't touch anything. He just goes in, he shoots, he comes back. If he was really smart, he would have picked up his shell casings. I mean, that would have made it even more complicated, because basically the shell casing is the only thing that linked everybody together. But yet it is so simplistic, and yet it's still unsolved. So I mean, to me, it's super frustrating. Cricket, let's go to you. What was your first initial concept of this I-70 serial killer series?
Well, I think that this case can be solved easily. I mean, not easily, but back then, like you said, we didn't have, it was different jurisdictions and all that stuff. But the gun itself, very unusual weapon to be used as for for that kind of thing.
Called an Irma Werke, and it is actually quite an unusual gun because it wasn't. There was only 6,000 of them made, and they stopped making them 100 years ago, and so they're more of a collector's piece. There are 22, but they're very luggy. They're huge. They're somewhat bunglesome. I mean, because they've got like an 11 3/4 inch barrel to them, and I mean it's quite weird. I mean, or it could have been an Intratec Scorpion. They thought it was that at first, but they've pretty much leveled it down to the Irma Werke. So it's one of those guns that you use to target practice, maybe. It's got a 22 bullet, which 22 bullets are actually so common people don't even pay attention to them. Everybody can buy 22 bullets. I mean, it's not that complicated, and you can buy a block of 500 at a time. So it's not 22 is like what country boys go squirrel hunting with. So it's not like something people are the FBI is gonna look down your throat because you're like, holy crap, they bought a 22 round. It's pretty common. But the gun itself that it came out of was what was really weird. And so it's really long, it's clunky. And like I said, there's only 6,000 of them made. I'm thinking if they know that only 6,000 of them are made, for one, I want to know how they know that. Is that just an estimate, or do they know for sure? And then I'm thinking it might be complicated, it might be hard, but how could we run down 6,000 of these? I mean, if there are 6,000, if there's like 500 at a local museum that displays weapons, then we can write those off. And then, you know what I mean? So is there a way to run down 6,000 guns? I don't know. To me, it sounds complicated, but 6,000 doesn't seem like that big of a number to me.
Didn't he start in his hometown?
Well, see, and that's the next thing. That's part of the update information. They think that they might have a suspect from Indianapolis,
Okay.
and they think he's alive and they think he's well. And I'm thinking, I hope they're wrong. I mean, I hope he's not alive and well.
Right.
If he killed all these people, but if he is alive and they can catch him before he dies, then that might give some answers to all the hurting people.
Yeah, they might be able to track the gun easier and where he lives, and it may not be his gun, but a relative's gun.
Yeah. Now, so we're going to talk about what happened for 16 months. Why did he go quiet for 16 months? Now, law enforcement think he may have went quiet for 16 months because he was in prison, he was in jail for something, or he could have gotten scared. Because after Sarah Blessing's murder, see, what happened was they were all in different states running back and forth. And back then, they didn't have the internet. They didn't have cell phones. You had to send things through. Most law enforcement used teletype. They didn't really use fax machines. They used teletype, which is kind of a fax machine wannabe type thing. And this is how they got their information between all of their jurisdictions. And so it took a solid month. Now, the hit on the two Patricias at the bridal shop, that one was so different, but they had a eyewitness that talked himself out of the situation, that seen him right head on. He was the one that gave the description that the guy was between 5'8" and 5'9", 150 pounds. He was a smaller guy. He was kind of a ginger, kind of reddish hair with a little bit of stubble. He was the one that was able to kind of give them a good idea, and he's also the one that kind of gave them their first sketch of the suspect. Now, they didn't release that immediately because they didn't realize it was connected to all of these other killings around the U.S. They thought they had something isolated because theirs seemed so different. There were two people and there was a witness that was so different than everyone else that just went in, got shot, walked out, nobody's seen anything. And so after they had done, it took about a month before they realized they were all connected. And then they did a big media blitz and let that man's face out on the news. Okay. And so all of a sudden, you've got 29 days. This man's getting away with murder over and over and over again. He's in control. I'm sure he feels powerful. He's euphoric with this wicked power that he has. And yet, all of a sudden, now his face is on the news. And so I think that is what startled him into doing something different. So he waits 16 months while everything's cooling down. He changes guns. He doesn't change ammunition, but changes guns. Still a 22 bullet. He changes guns. He drops down I-35 and he hits another series of women.
Yeah,
so I think that 16 months is maybe, it may have been a prison sentence, but I really think he was scared. Because
I think he was scared, and that was like he took a cooling off period to kind of revamp how he was going to continue.
Right. Now, there were some things pop up in the book that someone released recently. I can put some links to that book in the show notes so you guys can read it and get all the information that's in there. That book did say that there was other witnesses come forward, and I did know about two of them. There was one that I hadn't heard of. But basically, in the boot shop with Nancy Kitzmiller, there was someone across the shopping center, across the parking lot, that seen a gentleman walking across the parking lot, and then he sat down on the curb looking at the store, and he was kind of mumbling crazy stuff to himself, like he was either something mentally wrong with him, or he was on drugs or something, because he was there. And then all of a sudden they were gone, and then a little bit later all the police and everything come in. In another situation, they saw him basically race up this pretty steep embankment, this hill, back to I-70, and was hitchhiking before they realized who this was or what was going on. So you've got these different scenarios where he's being seen, but something about him is so unnoticeable that it's not sitting in people's minds. And so it's a very normal looking person that's obviously not raising a bunch of red flags. He's not some scary creepazoid looking person. He's just a plain Jane, just normal looking guy. And so I didn't know about the third person that had said they seen him, but I did see the one where they said he was running up a hill and hitchhiking. But here's my thing. They're all, if you go to all of these locations, it's pretty disturbing when you walk into these locations, into these shopping center complexes. They are just off of I-70. They are literally, you can spin heel and see I-70 in one direction or another from these shopping centers. So they're not far enough away from I-70 to say he had to have a ride back to I-70. So, but they're still disturbing in the fact that nobody saw a car parked anywhere. Nobody saw a semi parked anywhere. And they keep saying that there was no semis in this area. There was no semis in this shopping center. There's no... I want to know if there's any rest stops in the area. To me, if you go through and you look at each one of these hits, was there a rest stop within walking distance? Because I don't see a lot of semis actually. I've seen semis pulled over on the interstate 10,000 times, and I've never thought twice about it. I've seen semis pulled over at rest stops all the time. I see semis pulled over, of course, at truck stops. But they said, well, surely it's not he doesn't park his car on the edge of the road and leave it there. It'd be towed before he got back. I don't necessarily think so. Because if it took him 5 minutes to walk down there, shoot somebody, 5 minutes to walk back, I don't think anyone's going to notice that vehicle. But also, I think, how many times have you seen a semi pulled over to the side of the road? They said that they checked all the hotel records because they knew that hotels and truck stops and places like that would have surveillance, because back then not every business had surveillance. so they were trying to find places, and they said they couldn't find any hotel receipts or anything like that made it to, that they could find a match for. And I thought, well, why? How can he be traveling without hotel? Because 700 miles, one way, 600 another. I think I read somewhere between two of the hits was a 2.5 day drive. So I'm thinking he could very well be hopped up on something and drive for 2 days straight, I guess. But most likely, how would he avoid a hotel stay? The best way to avoid a hotel stay is to either sleep in your car or sleep in your semi, right? So I'm thinking, I want to know if anybody noticed a semi pulled over within walking distance of each of these places. I mean, does that sound logical to you guys? I think if there's a truck stop around, that's the first place I would look.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
I wonder if he's even actually a truck driver. Maybe he's not.
Well, see, and that's the thing. One person said that they saw him hitchhike, or they saw someone hitchhiking. And I thought, well, maybe he's hitching with truck drivers. You know
and if he were a truck driver, a lot of them have the bed right in the truck.
It's a sleeper cab.
Yeah, and hitchhiking, maybe he ran out of gas and was a little too far from the gas station and was hitchhiking for that reason. You just don't know. Right.
You never know. Well, that's what I'm wondering. All of you guys watching the video, you get to see me pour coffee all over me. Woohoo! That's what you get for listening versus watching. You get to miss things. Well, see, this is my concept of this guy. I'm thinking this is somebody who obviously doesn't have a real intense thought out plan, but he has enough wherewithal that he can walk off all of these. And so to me, that has still got a sense of, it's a hunter. It's kind of a hunter type thing. Now, my dad is partially Native American, and he's a hunter, and he has been all of my life. He was a hunter, and he said, when you're hunting a deer, you have to get in the mind of the deer. You find out, you start noticing things. You see where they've rubbed up against trees. You see where they cross over fences or they cross through fences. You find out where you find their droppings. You pay attention to the area, and then you stalk that area and they come by. And I'm thinking, to me, there's something of that hunter vibe there. He's looking for a specific area where that deer has come through. You know what I mean? And it's like this I-70 killer's got that same concept. He's looking for a place that is within eye shot of I-70, because he's already got some kind of plan in place to get back to I-70 within a minute or two. Okay. But my thought is, if he's just hitchhiking, I don't think he's a hitchhiker, just because how can he do this so many times and yet somebody picks him up every time? I mean, because it's a crap food. Somebody's going to pick you up or not. Yeah, and you don't want to be walking down I-70 when the cops actually fly up I-70 to go find the body you just killed.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
And not only that, even the way he's dressed, to me, that says truck driver. It doesn't necessarily mean, say, homeless or drifter.
Right. Well, because in one case it said that he was wearing an overcoat that was too heavy for the weather, but then in another one it said that the stranger that they saw talking to themselves was dressed fairly nice with slacks and a dress shirt, and then a big heavy overcoat.
Well, I took a trip once from Pennsylvania. I took a trip from Pennsylvania to Florida, and as the weather's getting warmer, I'm taking layers off. Right. So that's another thing.
Mm-hmm. So, but every time he was seen, he had some kind of big, heavy, weird looking coat on. And I'm thinking he just needed that big, huge, heavy coat to fit that bunglesome gun in it.
That's exactly true.
Why else would you wear a big, nasty, heavy when it's 100 degrees outside? Well, and I'm from Missouri. Okay, so I'm from Missouri, and you think, well, this is just March and April. Well, I'm telling you right now, this is February 27th when we're recording this. It was 80 something degrees today and hot and humid.
Wow.
So in Missouri, you never know, and I think tomorrow it's supposed to get down to 30 degrees. So, the weather's always crazy in Missouri. But my thought is if it's hot and humid, why would you wear a coat like that? You're trying to conceal something. I wrote the biography of an ex-gangster from Chicago, and he said he had a big, huge, heavy overcoat, tweed overcoat that he absolutely hated. It was uglier than sin, but he had cut slots on the inside of the lining in each place, and his mom would send him to the grocery store as a 10-year-old kid in Chicago, and he would go to the grocery store and he would steal half the groceries and keep half of the money and then take everything back to his mom and act like everything was fine, and she couldn't figure out why he never brought home a receipt. But I'm sitting here going, if you're wearing a coat like that, there's probably something you're hiding in it. But I don't know, it's just, to me, it feels like there is a reason why he's hitting this certain kind of person. Now, if you go down to the last one, Vicky Webb, they say that there's two camps in this. There's two camps. One camp says that they think the I-35 killings are different. And then there's another camp that says they think the I-35 killings are the same. Now, I'm kind of on the camp that I think they're the same. He got scared, he changed guns, but he didn't change his basic MO. And I think that is where I'm still thinking that they are the same, because you've got Marianne Glasscock in Fort Worth. Marianne Glasscock in Fort Worth happened the exact same thing as what happened on I-70. Somebody came in, shot her in the back of the head, stole a little bit of cash, walked out. No change. Okay. Amy Vess, same thing. In one of these cases, one of these women, they said it looked like they had rummaged through a few things. So that was a little bit odd, but basically the same thing. The only thing that was really different in Vicky Webb's case is the fact that he pulled her pants down, not completely off, just pulled them down. And when they investigated her and they talked to her and interviewed her, they said, did it seem like a sexual thing? And she said, no. She said it was almost like she really felt like he didn't think she was dead. So he was trying to do something drastic to see if she was really dead, and obviously, being a woman, if somebody goes to try to tear your clothes off, you're not going to pretend like you're dead. You're going to try to fight back. And she just couldn't because she was paralyzed. So I think the MO is the same. I don't see any differences. You guys think it's the same guy, or do you think it's different?
I think it's the same.
See, that's my thing. And I'm also one of those, Sergeant Crook, I think his sergeant was his final title before he retired. He has been on this case since the beginning. And he tends to think that they're the same. And so that makes me think so. But then I seen a documentary done by M. William Phelps. I think it was called Dark Minds. And this was back in 2019 when I was researching it before. I'll find a link to that too, and I'll share. In that, he said that somebody showed Vicky Webb, the one that survived. They showed Vicky Webb the sketch, and she said instantly, yes, that's the guy. So to me, that's pretty intense proof, but you also have to understand it's not 100% proof. It's not, because eyewitness statements aren't always accurate. And then with trauma and everything, it could be slightly off, but that's a pretty good indicator. She's going to know relatively what the guy looked like. Now, that's kind of where I feel like, she could have seen this man and said, yes, this is him. But then you also, once you study how the brain works and how trauma works and how it affects your memory, there's a slight chance that she saw this picture on the news and related it to her killer, her attempted killer. So, not consciously making a mistake, but there's always a slight chance. So you can't go on that 100% is what I'm getting at. But that's kind of my thought on this. Now, they said that there was another gentleman that they think could have been another victim in this. And this one, I really flat out don't think so. I'm looking at my notes here. What do you guys think? You guys think that her eyewitness claim is legitimate proof, or do you think we need a little more?
Oh, I agree with you. It's a good indicator, but it's not 100%. Because we've seen people who think that they see a loved one in the crowd every time they go out.
Right.
So
well,
yeah.
see, trauma affects your memory center so much more than people realize. And I'm trying to find. They think that they had another guy, and they think they might have a suspect. And I hope they're right. I hope I am flat out wrong on this, because they found somebody there was another case that they said was similar. So I'm looking that up while we speak. For some reason, I can't find my notes on this gentleman.
While you're looking back to the sketches,
Mm-hmm.
Isn't it strange that nobody can identify this person? Didn't they put his description probably all over the TV and all over the news, and nobody's recognizing him?
Well, they had thousands of people call in saying they recognize that. And that's where you come in and you get you start to have some problems, because thousands of people recognize the same guy, and it comes to find out it's nobody. But this is where you have to be careful, because that is so generic, and I'm also telling you, that's also the reason why nobody paid attention to him when he was walking through the parking lots of these places. He's just generic. There's nothing striking that stands out about this person. And so, I mean, how many short, ginger-haired men are there? There's a lot of them. So it's a matter of they run down the book that I read. It does tell a lot about some of the different suspects that they have run down over the years, and it just flat out never works out, and they're never in the right place at the right time, or they were incarcerated, and so it just makes it to where it's not that they're not trying, that's for sure.
Yeah. And those sketches that they had out for how many years, mm-hmm. I couldn't make any features from them out of anybody.
Right. Now, let's see. I'm trying to find this guy's name. Basically, in 2001, so we're talking many, many years later. So from 94 to 2001, so you've got 7 years there. They say in 2001 in Terre Haute, Indiana, this man was killed with a gunshot wound to the head. But it was also the guy came into the convenience store buying a beer and robbed him and shot him. And they think it's the same guy because on their surveillance tape, it looks kind of similar. The guy's a little bit darker headed, a little bit older, obviously. But they think that it could be the same guy. I don't think so, because somebody who's sadistic enough to hunt and kill a specific type of woman.
Yeah, and to be afraid of men, I mean.
And see, that was something that I brought out in the first podcast episode with Hootie. I think he was afraid of men because that man was able to talk his way out. And when they never have said exactly who this person was, and everything, but this man was a larger man. And when they did the documentary on Dark Minds, they got like a 6.5 foot tall black guy. So I'm assuming they would have done that for a reason, but we're talking a guy that was a lot bigger than the gunman. So he was big enough that he was able to intimidate the killer enough to let him talk his way out of the situation. And so I'm thinking, we've got a guy who is specifically targeting a specific type of person. But you've also got a guy who's intimidated by the fact that another man comes and confronts him in a situation, and he's able to verbally walk out of it. And so that tells me he wasn't as confident with that 22 that as he thought he was, because if he was, he'd have just shot the guy in the front of the store. It wasn't his ideal idea of how he wanted to kill people. But if the guy wasn't going to come to the back, why didn't he just drop in there? Why did he allow the man to back his way out of the store and run off without killing the guy? So that shows me there was a lack of confidence there. So I'm thinking, how is he going to walk into a convenience store or whatever store this was, grab a beer to buy a beer, and shoot the guy, because this is a guy that's, the cashier. He's going to shoot the guy while he's looking at the guy. I don't think this is the same animal. You're talking about back to the hunter versus hunted. I don't think it's the same animal. We're not talking about the same kind of thought processes here. It takes more guts to walk in and shoot someone in the face, or shoot them after you've looked them in the face versus shooting them in the back of the head. So I think that when it comes down to it, it's not the same man. I don't think so.
That's too much of a switch.
I really don't think it is. Hi guys, we've come to the portion of the show where I do my armchair profiling. Now, of course, I'm not a professional profiler, but I have spent thousands of hours studying psychology and neurolinguistic programming and biochemistry and how the brain works. And so this is just my concept of who this person could be. We are still looking for the I-70 serial killer. So I'm here with my Bones coffee. Make sure you check out the affiliate link. So that really goes to help support the show and helps me make more videos for you. But here I've got my Bones coffee. I'm taste testing the Irish cream for today. But we're going to jump right into profiling the I-70 serial killer. Okay. First thing, what are some of the physical things that we know about this person? We know that he is a white male. We know that he is 5'7" to 5'8", depending on which eyewitness statement you take. We know that he's only 140, 150 pounds. At the time of the killings, he was between 33 and 35, or so they think. He had short, blondish, reddish hair, kind of sandy blonde hair. Maybe you might even, I would say, could we take that a step further and call him a ginger? I'm not sure. But there's kind of a reddish, blondish, sandy blonde hair. We also know that there were several people that seen him. You have the woman who was shot by him and survived at the end. You also have a couple of different eyewitnesses who seen him walking around the parking lots, mumbling to himself. You saw the man who actually seen him through the window and made eye contact with the man for several seconds. You also have the very first witness to get away was the man who talked himself out of the situation during the murders at the bridal shop. So you've got all of these people who have seen this man and yet can't give an extremely good definition or description of this man. The reason why I believe this is, one, of course, you've got trauma, but I also believe that this could be because he's very plain. He's very usual looking. There's nothing unusual about this person, nothing that's going to stand out and make you take notice of this person. And that's the reason why in the introduction to this video, I used the words ghost, unseen, unheard. I'm thinking that this is probably something he has dealt with his entire life. He is not seen. He is not heard. He's not powerful. He's timid. He's small. And so he is going to make himself seen. He's going to make himself heard because he has not been seen or heard his whole life. Now, this is a concept that I take into this because I feel like we have a little bit of evidence to back this up. For one, we know he's non-confrontational. He's not wanting to watch the light go out of the women's eyes as they die. He's just wanting to go up behind them, kill them, get them out. Okay, there's nothing, he doesn't want to watch them die, he just wants to kill them. Okay. Also, when the larger male walks into the crime scene, he is able to negotiate his way out of the situation, even though the man had a gun. So you have the killer with a gun. It really doesn't matter how big the man was. He should have been able to overpower that man and force him to the back. Instead, he let the witness talk his way out of the situation and run off. So that shows he's non-confrontational. Okay. He was somewhat intimidated by this larger man. One of the witnesses also said they saw him mumbling and talking to himself. They wasn't sure if he was maybe schizophrenic or if he was on some kind of hallucinogenic drugs or what the situation was, but he talks to himself. We know that he targets petite brunettes. We know that he takes some cash, but not all of it. We also know there's no sexual assault. So I asked myself, what kind of man could do this? What kind of man? Well, for one, he's very usual looking. He's smaller than the average American man. He most likely has real low self-esteem. If he had a higher self-esteem, he would be more grandiose in his murders. He would be more grandiose in these things. Instead, he's timid. He's hiding. He wants to kill, but he doesn't want to see the fruits of his labor. He doesn't want to see them die. He just wants to have that power trip of taking the life. And so he's got a very low self-esteem. The next thing is so I try to start figuring out what kind of personality traits could this be. I don't believe it's bipolar disorder, and I don't believe that it is borderline personality disorder. If you study those two disorders, they don't quite match up. Now, we also know that he's definitely not OCD, because if he was, he wouldn't have left his shell casings behind. He would have taken all of the cash, and he would not have left any witnesses. Also, you can tell in the situation where he hit Sylvia's ceramics and ended up killing Mike McCown. He killed a man because he didn't do his research. He didn't case the place long enough to see that there wasn't a woman working. He just seen a woman's name on the sign. He saw someone smaller knelt down in front of a shelf, and it had a ponytail, so he shot. So this shows that he doesn't have that OCD tendency. He's got a little something else. And I'm kind of bouncing between PTSD and schizophrenia. Now, PTSD, though, has usually a cooling off period in between times. So you have something that triggers you, gets you back into that trauma state, and then you have a cooling off period. Well, if you watch the stair steps between all of these hits, the first 6 hits, the first 6 bodies were left behind within 29 days. So there wasn't a cooling off period. And so you have to understand that it doesn't quite match PTSD either. Now, schizophrenia, it might actually line up with that. But so we kind of have to leave that one in just open-ended because we're not quite sure. Now, I want to know exactly why is he targeting this type of woman? And I always ask, where's his Bonnie? Okay. Where's his Bonnie? The reason why I use that phrase, for those of you that watched the case unfold with the Golden State Killer, you notice that during his heightened states of trauma, right in the middle of his raping some of his victims, he would say the name Bonnie. Well, after all of everything unraveled, the man was in prison. The police actually found his Bonnie, found the woman that had stepped away from him because she was scared of him, and so he was constantly taking his Bonnie over and over again. He was physically taking her and killing her and having his way with her. That was his Bonnie. So I'm thinking we need to figure out who is this I-70 serial killer? Who is his Bonnie? Who is it? Could it be an ex-wife? Could it be a woman that never noticed him? Going back to the whole ghost concept. Could it be an abusive mother? Now, this is one thing where I have a hard time thinking it's an ex-wife, because there's a level of familiarity between the two. Even if the love is turned to hate, if he wanted sex, he would take it from her. Okay. None of these victims were sexually assaulted. Okay. So I kind of cut out the ex-wife, and I could be wrong. This is just my armchair sleuthing here. I'm wondering, is it a woman that never noticed him? Perhaps. Or could it be an abusive mother? Okay. Somebody that he respects enough not to go there. Someone that he respects enough not to watch them die. But someone he hates enough to still go ahead and pull the trigger. Okay. So this kind of gives you an idea of what I think the type of man we're talking about. Now, of course, we have a total. We had 6 victims on I-70, and then there were 3 more hits on I-35. Of course, the last one survived, and we're grateful for that. But this is kind of a quick rundown, a quick profile of who I think the type of man this man was or is. Now, of course, he could still be alive. We're wondering why hasn't he hit anyone else? Did he quit? Was he like the BTK killer and he has just kind of cooled off and is waiting to come back again? Is he in jail? I know some of the one of the ex-criminals I wrote a book about, he tended to wonder if maybe he was in prison since then, if he got arrested for something else and he's spending life behind bars. Or could he be dead? We don't know. But this kind of gives you a quick rundown idea of what kind of man that this I-70 serial killer could be. So let's give your final thoughts for anybody that wants more information on this. I'm going to upload all of my research on this case, all my photos and my little things that I've come up with over the years. I'm going to upload all that to Patreon, so all of my subscribers on Patreon can have that as their behind the scenes information this week. But what's your final thoughts on this? Tammy, let's start with you. What do you think? Do you think they will ever catch this guy?
I think they need to question, is that one guy still alive that talked to him, that talked him into letting him go? Is he still alive? Yeah. I wonder, because he would know his voice, his mannerisms.
Yeah. Well, see, they had a tape of the audio portion of the tape of the guy that robbed the convenience store and shot the guy, and he was too quiet, and they tried to take that back to Vicky Webb. And Vicky Webb couldn't recognize the voice or recognize things. So I think that they're trying to do that. But see, you've got the guy next door to Sarah Blessings who saw the guy through the window and then watched him run away. And then you've got the people from the store across the way who saw the guy standing around and mumbling and sitting on the curb. And so you've got, several witnesses that seen something but didn't know what they seen. See, that's another reason why I do these things. If you see something, say something, because you don't know. Some of these people didn't come forward right away, not because they were hiding things, but because they didn't know what they seen. They didn't realize it was so important. So I can't help but think there's somebody out there that has a little piece of this puzzle that they think is irrelevant and they don't even know what it means. But if they hand it into law enforcement, they can put it in and it will finish and complete this puzzle and make sense of it. And so I think that, I think a lot of people, they don't really know what they have is the thing. They don't realize they might have the key that unlocks this whole thing. Yeah. Okay, well, I'm going to jump off here. Thank you, girls, for joining me. Thank you all for watching and listening. I will see you guys next time on the next episode of Chasing Justice Revisited.